Silence could be a blessing, but silence could be the greatest crime. In 1941, there was a conference, and with Hitler and his top minister said, what are we going to do with the Jewish problem? I said, we could wipe out the Jewish people. You know why? Because what we're doing till now, the world is not saying anything. If the world is not saying anything, then we could do whatever we want. And a lot of times in our own life, we may be in situations we say, should we remain silent or should we speak up? If we remain silent, we'll stay good with everybody. If we speak up, we may lose our job, we may lose our family, we may lose our friends, we may lose certain things. What do? It's interesting right now, what's going on in the world, the same thing. A lot of times we see things. A lot of people say, stay quiet. It's not our problem. It's their problem. It's in Israel. It's outside the world. It's not our families. Do we remain quiet or do we speak up? Our Torah teaches us the crime of silence in this week's Torah portion. See, Pharaoh, like Hitler and Machshemai, had the same problem in his mind. The Jewish problem. How do we get rid of the Jews? And he got together with 3 advisors, Bilam, Yisro, and Eiv. Bilam, Jethro, and Job. And Bilam came up with like a typical anti-Semite. Let's throw away the male children into the river and we'll enslave the adults. Jethro started screaming, how dare you do that? Job stayed quiet. What was the end of the story? Bilam was killed many years later. Jethro had to run away, but eventually what happened? His daughter married Moses. His grandchildren were the leaders of the Jewish people. And Job lived a life of misery and suffering. You may wonder, what did Job do wrong? He stayed quiet. Maybe you may even think it was a good strategy. I stayed quiet. I remain friends with everyone. I can't help anyway the situation. They're not going to listen to me anyway. So stay quiet and don't say anything. And then I continue being invited to the parties, continue sitting in front row, I'll continue being friends with everyone. But the Torah tells the crime of silence is worse than anything. Why? Because even though Job may have, at that day when he came home, he told his wife, Jethro was a nut job. He started screaming, and he just had to run away, and he didn't accomplish anything. Me, look at me. I'm still invited. I still have my badge. I can still park in the good spaces. I did everything right. And look, I'm still friends with everyone. And Jethro's a nut job. The problem with Job wasn't that he was really helping the Jewish people. His number one focus was his own career. And he says, for my own career, what's the best thing for me to do is to stay here. The Jewish people are suffering. I feel bad, but there's nothing I can do. I don't really care. But if he really, really bothered him, and if it's like you cut your foot and you're screaming. I say, why are you screaming? How's that going to help? What do you mean? If it hurts, you scream. If something really bothers you to the core of your soul, how could you remain silent? And that's the question. And that was the problem with Job, is that he went home that night, he went to sleep feeling good, not worrying about what's going to be the answer with the Jewish people. See, real people, real leaders live by the conviction and not by what they'll buy them more popularity. And that's something so important. We have to realize what's going to do for us in our own lives. And that's why you see Jethro's kids became leaders and judges, because they had that in their DNA. In our own lives, we often have to choose between being Job or Yisro. And who are you and what are you doing? I'm reminded of the story that occurred in February of 2013, about 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Still remember reading that story. There's a guy, Michael Garcia, a 45-year-old waiter at a restaurant in Houston, Texas, had regularly served a family that included a 5-year-old child with Down syndrome. Milo Castillo was the name. But then another family seated nearby asked to be moved. And Garcia duly obliged until he heard one of them say, listen to this, special needs children need to be special somewhere else. Wow. Garcia was thrown by this cruel remark and couldn't believe that the man had said this in front of his own children. Although worried that he may lose his job, Garcia felt he had to do something. Garcia said to the man, I'm sorry, I can't serve you. The family quickly left, but not before Garcia told him, how could you say that? How could you say that about a beautiful 5-year-old angel? The story got attention. A lot of people sent him money, donations. He took that money from donations, went to that boys' school, a special needs school, and gave them the money to help the children even more. He easily could have remained silent, but he chose to speak, and the nation applauded him. Often we witness things that are wrong, destructive, and immoral. We know of abuse. We see people getting hurt, but we choose silence because we want to be good with everyone. This, says the Talmud, is a crime of all on its own, the crime of silence. The world's silence in the 1940s proved to Hitler that Jewish blood is inexpensive, if not meaningless. Let's not our silence today prove the same to the Hitlers of today. We have to speak up. Right now they have the big discussion with the hostage release. Of course, we're excited for the families to get back their loved ones, but it comes at a heavy price that it's a big question if something that we're allowed to do. Because so many more lives are going to be in danger. And like Hamas said, they're going to do that. And that's the whole debate about it. And but it teaches us how we have to always speak up. A wise woman once said, many times in life, I've regretted the things I've said without thinking. But I have never regretted the things I said nearly as much as the words I left unspoken. We can't afford to make this mistake again. We can't afford to make the crime of silence. Shabbat Shalom.